What if your AI agents were as carefully architected as your Salesforce org? So every assistant knew exactly what to do, when to do it, and which systems to call on. Hey everyone, Greg Banks here. Welcome back to Cirrius Talk. Today I'm joined again by Tim and Gavin to unpack what a well-designed AI agent architecture actually looks like for business and technology leaders. We're going past the buzzwords and breaking down the real building blocks. Agents as the decision makers, MCP servers as the shared capabilities into systems like Salesforce and Jira, and skills as the workflow logic that ties it all together. If terms like separate agents, multi-agent patterns, or agentic workforce are starting to pop up in your meetings, but you're not sure when you need a new skill, a new MCP, or an entirely new agent, this episode is going to give you a mental model you can use. Tim and Gavin walk through practical cues for when to split agents, when to orchestrate them together, and how to future-proof your AI strategy as tools like skills evolve and models like Claude Opus 4.5 keep raising the bar. At Cirrius, we're helping Salesforce customers navigate this exact shift, bringing AI into Agentforce, Data Cloud, Revenue Cloud, Field Service, Sales and Service Cloud with secure, reusable patterns instead of one-off experiments. So whether you're leading a Salesforce team, owning a line of business, or just trying to make sense of the AI noise, stick around. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear framework for deciding what belongs where in your AI agent architecture. Tim and Gavin, following a long Thanksgiving weekend. Good to have you guys back today.
Yeah, good to be back. I would say Murphy's Law is very real today. Trying to get back from the holiday and forgot my wallet at the house, forgot my headphones. So if I sound a little different, it's with the lack of headphones, but we're going to make it work. We're pushing forward. And it was a great holiday, so hope yours was good as well.
Yeah, mine was pretty great. Got to eat all the pies. That is my favorite holiday food.
Which
I don't
pie?
Discriminate. I go across
Pecan?
the board. Cherry, pecan, everything.
There you go. Nice.
Always going to go to pecan or pecan. We won't go there. All right. Well, glad you guys are back. Glad to be with you again today. Tim, what's on the docket today? Where are we going to go?
Yeah, so I think it's a topic we're talking with a lot of different businesses about right now, and it's thinking about well-designed AI agent architecture and what are the main levers that business leaders have when it comes to types of systems or programs or tools that they can build within their AI agent architecture. And so we're going to talk a little bit about agents versus MCPs versus skills versus separate agents versus multi-agent patterns, and when to recognize a use case as a fit for one or more of those, and some anti-patterns to avoid as well. So really, really exciting topic, something that we're talking with a lot of businesses quite a bit right now, and I think something that a lot of business leaders are trying to get their hands around. So yeah, I think it just start with talking around like what are these different components. We talked around kind of the 5 things here: agents, MCP, skills, separate agents, multi-agents. We'll start with AI agents. We hear this buzzword all the time, AI agent. I think different people think different things when they hear the term. So Gavin, like what have we kind of settled on, and how are we seeing agents when we work with customers and when we're talking with business leaders about AI agents?
Well, AI agents are essentially the brain of the operation when it comes to your agentic platform, right? We could be talking about several agents here, but just focusing in on one, this is what's going to be receiving the prompt. It's going to be using the power of LLMs to determine what the agent does with the prompt. So there are a few things that we're going to be talking about today that are actually contained within the agent itself, and a few things that are separate from the agent. But just think about this as the state at which your prompt is evaluated, the UI at which you're interacting with the agent, and the brain that's using the LLMs to determine what skills, what MCPs, what other things that is going to be done with the prompt.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to think about it. And then typically memory associated with that as well. And that's something else that it can call on to kind of, if it has either short-term or long-term memory, to rely on for context as well. And so, yeah, I think, really the agent is determining who uses what, when, and why. And really, like you said, takes that natural language and turns that into actual action. So in agent, you mentioned a couple of things that it has at its fingertips. It's got MCPs and it's got skills and tools. So when we're talking about MCPs, what are we talking about there?
So MCPs, think about this like the abilities that your agent has, particularly when it comes to connecting to other systems or doing a particular task. So this is the tool work of an agent. However, one really big distinction with MCPs over agents and even skills, which we'll talk about here soon, is they don't exist with inside the agent. So these MCPs can be utilized by multiple agents. So this is what is really giving not just your agent, but your agent workforce scalability by giving additional MCPs and improving the MCPs that you have.
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest unlocks that we had just internally for our own company as well as we rolled out AI capabilities is I think we, along with a lot of other businesses, were having this mindset of like, okay, we got to find these use cases and apply AI agents to do these use cases. And then we realized like, well, actually MCPs are shared, across multiple agents. So if we can get a really high impact MCP server that provides a lot of context to a lot of agents, you could get big bang for your buck tackling some really key MCPs early on and just knocking out capabilities that you can apply to not only the agent or agents you're working on now, but any agent you build down the road. And so, yeah, I think when you're thinking about what is an MCP server, when do I need to think about it when you need secure, reusable connections to data, APIs, or enterprise systems for your agent. And you want some type of raw capability that's shared across agents. And it's got to be stable, and it's got to be auditable, and it's got to be secure. So some examples for like MCP servers that we've seen is like an MCP server to access Salesforce records within your CRM, having an MCP server to access Jira tickets, to either create Jira tickets or query and pull in information from Jira tickets, accessing document storage or Google Drive or ERP data. Those would all be examples of MCPs, which contrasts quite a bit with kind of a newer concept that's coming out over the last, I'd say, like 3 months, which is skills. And so what are skills, and then how are they different from MCPs, and how do agents use those?
Yeah, I'm super excited for skills. I think this is a signal to me that AI development is heading in the right direction. So think of skills, they exist with inside the AI agent context, unlike MCP servers. And what's nice about skills is it basically gives a defined set of instructions for a particular thing you want your agent to do. So you would want to leverage a skill when perhaps it's not necessarily you need a bunch of logical thinking on what to do. Once you've arrived at what you want to do, now you perform that action. That's what the skill is going to do. Skills are also typically your connections to MCP servers. So for instance, your AI agent might decide that it needs to utilize the skill to update an account in Salesforce. Your skill will then pick up, run through that logic, and call the MCP into Salesforce to do the particular action of updating an account. So if you think about this, if there are any programmers listening or people that have lived in the tech space for a while, this reminds me very much so of object-oriented programming. You have your agent as your object, your skills as your particular methods within the object, and your MCPs are outside of the object context, sitting in some sort of helper that can be utilized across multiple objects.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of thinking about it for sure. Yeah, and I think the way I'm visualizing in my head is skills are agent local, so they're not shared across multiple agents, and it's the logic and orchestration piece. So anytime you hear process or workflow, that's probably a skill within an agent. And so we had the example before of like the MCP server could be accessing Jira tickets. Well, the skill is triaging a ticket. Before you access the Jira ticket, there's probably steps that you have to do or a well-defined process that have to happen. Then you have to create the ticket or access other related tickets. And then after that, you're going to have to take particular action to format the ticket the right way or to send a communication back to the customer. So a skill houses all of that and could call one or multiple MCP servers throughout the skill. Which I find pretty interesting. So you actually kind of end up with this triangle of AI agents with skills and MCPs, where an AI agent can have multiple skills. It also can call directly to multiple MCPs, and then skills can call multiple MCPs as well. And so thinking about these in the right way and applying them to the right use cases is really, really critical. So we see a lot of people not really understanding the difference between these and trying to put an agent where it really should just be an MCP, or trying to just use an MCP where you really need a skill. And so I think understanding these three components, these are kind of the three main building blocks, is really, really critical to understand as you're looking to undertake, implementing AI agents across your business. And that's something we're really working with a lot of businesses on and kind of fine tuning right now. Businesses have no shortage of solid use cases to apply AI agents. Now it's really determining, okay, which of those use cases are really a fit for an agent versus an MCP server versus a skill. So we're talking about kind of single agents here, but we said we're thinking about well-architected AI agent architecture that could include not just single agents, but also many agents. And so I think the next decision point that a lot of business leaders face when you're planning your AI agent strategies is, okay, I've got a plan for this agent. I've got more use cases. I'm trying to tackle these. When do I know when to create something as a separate agent from the agent I'm working on? Or when do I know when I need to maybe string multiple agents together in a multi-agent pattern? So separate agents, kind of starting with that. What are some key things or cues that you really look for, Gavin, when it's like, okay, this is really a sign that we probably need to separate this out into a separate agent from what we're working on right now?
Yeah, if I were to get a new requirement in the pipeline to extend the capability of my agentic workforce, the first thing I'm going to look to do is say, is this a skill that I can add to an existing agent and possibly expand out MCP functionality, things of that nature? But oftentimes what you'll start to find is things like I'm adding a skill to an agent that's not really even operating in the world that that skill is specified for. So for instance, maybe you have a sales versus a service agent. So at any point in time where you find yourself adding a service skill to a sales agent, you might think maybe it's time to build out a separate agent to handle the service side of the house. Additionally, anytime that there's a different input for that skill to be triggered. A lot of these agents are triggered and communicated via Slack. Maybe you want this interaction to be done automatically, behind the scenes. So that's the type of scenarios I would be looking for, whether or not to create a separate agent. Additionally, you might look at something like maybe I need a less powerful LLM to run this agent in particular, right? Kind of comparing price points on LLMs as well and the type of computing power you need to perform the task.
Yeah. Yep. Totally agree. And I think we've kind of settled on almost like a 5-question workflow to ask around any given use case that you're looking at. And if you have an agent now and you're looking at some other use cases, you can kind of ask these 5 questions. And if any of these are true, it probably means you got to create a separate agent. So 1, is it something that requires a distinct audience or interaction style from the agent you currently have? 2, is it a distinct decision space? So like agent A that I have now should be allowed to create tickets, but agent B, the one I want to build, should only be able to read the knowledge base, right? So it's a wholly, entirely different decision space and area that it needs to have context on. 3, does it have distinct long-term context? So, in terms of like the types of information and data it needs access to, like a sales agent tracks opportunity history versus a delivery agent that would track project risks, so to speak. 4, does it have distinct security and data domains? Do I only need a group of HR or operations to see this agent versus finance seeing another one? And then finally, like distinct pacing or triggers. This is especially critical if it's like an autonomous agent running in the background. Is it something that has to run daily versus maybe I'm working on another agent, like an account health agent, for example, that assesses account health for all of the active accounts across my business, and I want that to run weekly? Then that probably needs to be a separate agent. So kind of 5 different questions you can ask yourself there that can help you really narrow in and delineate. So that's separate agents. But then you also have maybe some times where, okay, I don't really need a separate agent, but I'm stretching the bounds of the agent that I'm working on now. And now I'm thinking I need to extend the capabilities. I probably need something like a multi-agent pattern. So what are some different cues or things to look at as a business leader there to maybe understand, hey, I may need to look at a multi-agent architecture?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, when you look at historical decisions have to be made for, enterprise architecture across the board in technology, multi-agent is when you're having to deal with maybe a lot of different systems that feed into one decision point for an agent. So you might want one centralized agent to be able to communicate to agents that are built specifically to handle a task and not necessarily a skill from an agent. Maybe those sub agents have multiple skills, but they're used to interact with the financing side of the house. You have another agent interacting with the sales side of the house, another agent with the service side of the house, and you want a centralized agent to be able to answer questions and perform tasks based off of input from all three of those agents. That's when you would want to look at a multi-agent architecture.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a really good way to think about multi-agent patterns. And so now the big thing, like how do you pull all these together and kind of think about them as a holistic approach to AI agent architecture? And I think ultimately it comes down to kind of a few key concepts. And I think it's one, think of agents as your decision makers. So it's the agents are deciding on when to use what and how. And then they're calling on different things like MCP servers. MCP equals capabilities, raw capabilities. And so there are things that an agent can call directly on or something that a skill could call on as well. And then skills, we want to associate in terms of mental cues as behavior. So how we want the agent to work or the process we want it to follow in very specific situations, like generating a proposal, for example. And then we've got multi-agents, which could either be different agents or it could be a multi-agent architecture. And we talked around a few of the different cues that we have there. And so at the end of the day, I think it's one of the same principles that have existed for a while in terms of designing well-designed architecture. Build from the bottom up, but then design from the top down. And so in terms of some easy questions you can ask yourself to determine what fits where. Does it access external or shared systems? Probably an MCP. Is it domain logic or workflow composition? Probably a skill. Does it reason, decide, and converse? Probably an agent. And do we have distinct roles, users, or data domains? Probably separate agents or multi-agents. And I think kind of using those kind of questions and mental cues in your head can help guide you in the right direction in terms of thinking when to apply what. But Gavin, any other thoughts and kind of pulling it all together?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen exactly that. And like I said earlier, I do feel very excited about this space and where it's going because of how much it's mirroring so much development that we've seen in the past. So this is the exact kind of question lines you would find yourself asking when it comes to building out Apex triggers in Salesforce or software development in general. So what we're seeing here is just a delineation of specific goals or tasks into individual containerized compartments that we can focus our efforts on those specific pieces one at a time. So yeah, I'm seeing exactly like you said before, and I'm very excited about it.
I think it's one of those common paradoxes where everything changes, but nothing's new under the sun. So it seems like we see that all the time. So yeah, I think definitely a really interesting topic and something that a lot of businesses are trying to get their hands around and something that's going to continue to evolve as the tools change and evolve over time as well. Like we've already seen skills just in the last 3 months become such a bigger critical piece of architecture, and even more so just in the last week as Claude released Opus 4.5. So really excited to see how this continues to evolve. But I think if you kind of take this mental model and see these components the way we talked around today, gives you a really flexible way to think and apply the different kind of levers you have at your hand to different use cases to really build a sound foundation for wherever AI is going to go over the next few years. So yeah, exciting topic.
Gentlemen, you've covered 2 hours worth of stuff in a little bit of time here. Tim, we call this a mental model to walk away with. I hope the terms and the recap at the end there will really help people retain this, but there's a visual we'll actually post in the show notes as well to help with this. The news cycle is just short, just going really, really fast with new terms and new features every week. So I appreciate you guys staying on the front edge of this and breaking it down for the world to understand. So thanks guys for the time today. We'll make sure we get that content in the show notes. If anybody has questions or comments on this, there'll be links on how to contact us to engage as well. So thank you both for your time. I appreciate it. Welcome back from the long holiday.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Thanks, Gavin. Have a good one.
Everyone.
Y'all take care. Thanks for hanging out with us on Cirrius Talk today. If this conversation helped you make a little more sense of agents, MCPs, skills, and multi-agent patterns, imagine what a tailored architecture could do inside your own org. We've dropped the visual mental model for the episode in the show notes, so grab it and use it with your team as you're mapping out where AI fits next in your Salesforce ecosystem. And if you're wondering whether something should be an agent, an MCP server, or just a skill, that's exactly the kind of problem we love helping leaders solve here at Cirrius Solutions. If you've got questions, ideas, or a use case you want to pressure test, follow the links in the show notes to get in touch with us. While you're there, be sure to follow Cirrius Talk and leave a review, and share this episode with a colleague who's wrestling with their AI strategy. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.